to the Future of Education podcast. Here's our host, the co-founder of 2 Hour Learning, Mackenzie Price.
Hey everybody, welcome to Future of Education. Yesterday, Vidya and I talked about the transformative power of parental engagement, how to really be a team with your kid's teacher, and how to help kids kind of get connected with what they're doing at school and how that applies to the real world. Today, I want to continue that discussion. We're going to talk about overcoming barriers to help kids achieve more. So here's my conversation with Vidya Sundaram. She's the co-founder and CEO at Family Engagement Lab. Vidya, thank you for joining me again. I'm really excited to continue our conversation and talk more about this idea of like the achievement gaps that we're seeing and how can we as parents help our children overcome these obstacles, no matter what our socioeconomic status. Well, and first of all, is that the big issue? Is it socioeconomic status that causes the achievement gaps? Let's start with a basic question, that we could spend days on.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. That's a big question. Is there a causal relationship between socioeconomic status and achievement gaps? And I think when you look at, over time, and lots of researchers have tried to answer that question, but what we've seen with the role of families engagement in learning has more than twice the impact on student learning outcomes than their socioeconomic status. And so the research there is very compelling that there are things that families, when they're properly supported, equipped to support learning, that the opportunity for students shouldn't be dependent on their, where they live or their socioeconomic status. But it really is up to us as a society to help ensure that all kids have equal access to opportunities that are afforded when you've got a really great functioning education system that's working for everyone. And the education system, think about family engagement, it involves families are a key role in a really high functioning education system.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking about this stat. I spoke at a conference the other day where I was talking about the third grade reading level. By third grade, if a kid is behind grade level in reading and is not proficient, right, their chances of graduating on time go down. Has a much more profound effect than even spending time in poverty, right? And so you think about that where if you've got, an engaged parent who's paying attention to how their kid's doing, how are they reading, right, by third grade, it makes a whole huge difference. And the point I was bringing across was that it starts early, right? Academic outcomes are very much tied to early academic achievement, which is very much tied to engagement, right? And it is a family affair, teaching a kid how to read. It's absolutely a family affair. It should be something that they can do. So you guys spend a lot of time kind of working on this and helping parents figure out how do you, find out if your child is at risk of falling into this achievement gap. What are those signs? And then what are the early interventions that can be applied to prevent this?
Yeah, that's a really great question because, there's incredible research recently done by an organization called Learning Heroes that highlights how the signals for parents about their child's learning progress may not be the best signals that parents think they are. So, for example, a lot of parents look to their child's report card progress as indications of whether their children are on track and they're reading at the expected grade level. But we've seen this in a lot of different school districts where we work, but also in this research that was done at a larger scale by Learning Heroes, that the report card grades generally do not reflect the student's academic performance at grade level.
No, they don't.
And that's a really common misconception. And unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever it is, the report card grades at each quarter are really intended by the educators and the survey results that come out. What do educators use as the basis for those report card grades is a wide mix of things. It can include the students' participation in class. It can include the students' perceived effort in the work that they're doing. It can include extra credit, for example, or other types of things that may not directly be related to the subject material.
Yeah, of course.
And so what ends up happening is that students' performance according to the report card grades are often higher than if you look purely at the skills and the grade level standards that are associated with those skills, the better measures are usually more of the standardized assessments, but together they give you a whole picture of how kids are doing. Unfortunately, parents, they're more looking at the report card grades as an indication of how their kids are doing.
And that's one of the things we need to be screaming that from the rooftops. And I actually do say, like, parents, you cannot trust the grades that you're getting. Like, I would actually even go so far as to say sometimes, like, schools and teachers are lying to you about your kid. And they just had research come out of the state of California said, oh, grades have improved, in the last 3 years. After COVID, we've seen grades improve. What they didn't say is test scores have gone down, right? So they're now giving more A's and B's and the test scores are going down. I know standardized testing also gets a bad rap, but I think it's so critical. What you said is that will give you a really more accurate understanding of how your child is doing than the report card that a teacher's filled out.
Yes. I mean, it's difficult too, right? I mean, I think it's also important to call out that standardized tests are given, especially the state ones are given once a year, and it's a snapshot in time. It's a single assessment. So that can also have problems, right? You may not necessarily be able to get a very nuanced perspective on the student's individual learning needs and whether they perform well or not, or whether they're comfortable taking tests. Like, there are all sorts of factors that go into that as well. But I think the main issue is that it's a snapshot in time. And often those assessments, the scores are released many months after the assessment is given. So it's very, very difficult to plan interventions to support kids using those assessments. And so what you've seen too is a lot of schools are now using different formative assessments or interim assessments. So you also have to scrutinize those because some of them are better aligned with the learning standards for that grade level than others. And I think it's really important to understand too how schools are using those assessments to support kids and whether they're really, truly reflecting the students' academic progress over time.
No, I was going to say, I think you raise a really interesting point because, it's true. These standardized tests, first of all, they're only given once a year. So you're absolutely right about that. The results are much later and really they're not given results. And we have this conversation regularly. So at our schools, we use MAP testing. We do it 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. And we use the MAP test results in terms of for each kid, like, oh, here's the learning we have to do. Now we have advantages because we're providing basically AI and adaptive learning for each of our students. So we can really personalize the education. But one of the things that I'll often hear from parents is they'll say, oh yeah, well, my student takes MAP tests, at their school, they take MAP tests. And I'll say, oh, do you have that report? They'll say, yeah, I have that report. Here it is. And I say, how many pages is that report? Well, it's 2 pages. And I'll say, that's not true. MAP reports are like 18 pages, but schools don't even give parents the full report because unfortunately there's nothing they're going to do about it. It's like they can't go in and figure out this whole, it's outdated information. It's a problem there. So I guess my question to you, and I was so unsuccessful at doing this within a traditional school environment that I literally had to leave the system and start my own schools. So I'd love your advice. What can a parent do to effectively advocate for personalized learning within a traditional school system?
Well, I think the approach we take at Family Engagement Lab that's been really effective at improving learning outcomes is to equip parents with an understanding of what are the specific skills that are expected of their child throughout the year. And I think you're highlighting, right, those reports, the family reports that give a very high level of what's going on, but they don't get into the skill level.
No,
they don't explain or help parents understand how the child is expressing their learning progress through demonstration of learning standards through the skills that they're building over the course of the year. And we help parents understand how to look for that. And once you get to that skill level, you find there's a lot of common ground. So for example, when students, it's a really common, spiraled learning standard where students are learning how to express their opinions and use evidence to express their opinions. And they do that in more and more sophisticated ways as they go up, by grade level, as they're aligned to, the ELA. Most of the state learning standards have this standard built in. So that skill is very easy for a parent to talk to their kid about. Hey, what did you think of that movie? Tell me why. What are your reasons for your opinion? Or do you think we should have ice cream, just once a week, or should we have it every day?
And let's talk about what are your arguments? Yeah. Well, that's one thing we do at our school. We have programs where kids have to do basically devil's advocate. Like they've got to be able to argue the other side of what they're asking for. They're advocating for this. We'll say, great, argue the other side. And then we'll have AI kind of have to rank it. They have to be able to get a 5 out of 5 from AI on the argument they didn't want to make. And so those are great examples. Wait, let me ask you, I want to step back for a second because you said this is what your group helps parents with. So if there's a parent listening who says, yeah, I'd love to understand how to basically make sure my kid is understanding the skills. How can I do this? Where do they go? Do they go to your website? Is it something where you consult with people? How does this work?
Yes. Yeah. So what we do is, for a parent who's out there who's really interested in engaging with their school, specifically on what skills their kids are learning in a way that's really constructive, and it's not something that takes a lot of time too. I think that's something that you were acknowledging earlier, like teachers are busy, parents are busy. So how we do it is we pick out just one piece of info that's going to help a parent distill and understand that skill that's most important at that point of the year. And it's a stream of information throughout the year, but it's a short bite of information that they can use to then extend into their conversations day to day.
Oh.
Not meant to take more time, but it's meant to build your knowledge, awareness, and to spend more of your time really connecting. Like get out of the software, get out of the, the app, like connect with your kid, connect with your child's school.
Of course.
About what they're learning.
Yeah. So does this get delivered via email or is it an app? Is it something that parents are constantly can check in as a resource? What is it?
It's so simple. I mean, the hard part is, and any writer will know, it's easy to write something, 100 pages long. It's harder to write something that's, a page long. We distill very precise information about student learning into the size of a text message, less than 140 characters long.
Really?
That goes out twice a week.
Amazing.
That's specific to grade level skills and in dozens of languages as well.
No way.
So that every family can participate. And it gets delivered to every family in a school system by text message.
It kind of reminds me of when I was pregnant and I'd get the weekly emails that would say like, your baby is the size of an apricot right now. Your baby's the size of a grapefruit. Here's what's happening in your body. Here's things you should be doing, all of that. Okay. So they do this. And is the way to sign up is to go to your website? Is that how they can sign up for these texts?
Yeah. So we encourage parents, if they're interested, to go to our website, familyengagement.lab.org, and to share information about your school system that we can partner with. So we work directly with school systems to help them share learning information that's aligned with the learning resources and calendars. So if a school system is using a specific math or English language arts curriculum, and this is incredible, right? So your school may be teaching about habitats, in February. What we do is we take that habitats unit and we'll create very specific, brief tips for parents for what to ask your kid when they come home that day about habitats.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And it's short, simple, and the results are incredible because we found that through that approach, we're increasing learning outcomes, accelerating learning outcomes for students by 2 to 3 months in an 8-week pilot of that.
Absolutely. Well, it's answering the question we talked about in our last episode when instead of just saying how's school today, you can be like, hey, so what did you learn about the speckled frog and didn't you think that was cool? That's a really interesting thing. Okay. So it sounds like parents should go check out your website to get connected with text, share this with their schools, because then your organization can link with schools to provide more specific information to parents as well. This is really cool. I like this conversation because I feel like someone who's walking away will be able to say, oh, this is something I can do that can actually help give me tips for engaging with my kids, engaging for my with my teachers in a better way. It's a very interesting thing. Okay, well, what's your final parting thought? What's the final thing you want to tell parents?
Well, my final thing I want to tell parents is that everyone cares about kids. And we're all part of a world, I think, where we need to show up for our kids more than ever now. And so I feel really optimistic because everyone I know is their heart in a really good place with a focus on, on kids. And I'm excited for your work, Mackenzie, and the audience here listening. And I invite you all to continue with that focus and making sure kids are at the center because they need us more than ever.
I love that. That's wonderful advice. Well, thank you for joining me, Vidya. It's really nice to get to talk and have this conversation. This wraps up this episode of Future of Education. Again, thank you so much to my guest today, Vidya Sundaram, who's the co-founder and CEO at Family Engagement Lab. Go check out her website, familyengagementlab.org, and you can get those texts to give you really short, easy, tangible ideas for how you can connect with your kid. You can also go to futureofeducationpod.com. We've got summaries of our episodes, contact information for our guests, or maybe you think you should be the next interviewee here on the Future of Podcast. You can even apply for that too. You can always reach out on social media. Instagram handle is future_of_education, or you can check out Future of Education on YouTube. And if you haven't subscribed yet and you want to hear this podcast more regularly, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That's all for today. But until next time, remember, kids are limitless. Our job is to help unlock their potential. Have a great day.